Yeah. We'll go through a bit of the nomination criteria and process around it. Fletch will also talk around about the pathway and the next steps beyond the Player Development Hub programme. We'll talk about eligibility and selection criteria linking to the blueprint, and obviously Q&A. The way we'd like to run the Q&A is please drop any questions you've got either into the chat or the Q&A function. We'll get round to as many questions as we can as we go live tonight. If we don't get around to everyone, we'll then look to put a Q&A sheet together for those unanswered questions. We have got another webinar starting at 8 o'clock, so we do have a cut-off time of 8 o'clock as we have the girls, a similar girls webinar beginning at 8 o'clock this evening, which some of you may be on as well. But any questions that you've got throughout this, please fire them into the Q&A, and Fletcher and I will certainly try and answer as many as we can. But yeah, really exciting opportunity to share this information with you. Just wanted to show this before we go into a bit more detail. This is our holistic kind of player pathway diagram. And tonight we are very much focusing on that bottom right hand side of the pathway, around about our Player Development Hub program, which is for identified under 15 boys. And then later on tonight we're going to discuss the girls program on a different webinar. But so this is very much that early stage, that first stage in player development and player pathway programs we're discussing this evening, and a really exciting opportunity for everyone to get involved. So then the boys in the 15 pathway, just going to show this diagram that gives a bit of an explanation of what the pathway is for under 15 into under 16 boys within Scotland. As I said earlier on, the nominations for all these programs that we're going to discuss this evening open tomorrow. So for the boys and girls programs, they start and will go live tomorrow. And I'll bring up further details of how player nominations will work later on in this slide deck. But that will be all online and will be available as of tomorrow afternoon. This first step is to nominate for the Boys Under 15 Player Development Hub programme in March and April. And that programme, if we go off similar programmes that we've ran both pre-COVID and post-COVID, it roughly involves about 550 boys from clubs and schools throughout the country. Each of our 5 rugby development regions run hubs at different locations. So there's circa 15 hubs throughout Scotland. Those hubs are coached and managed by qualified coaches and managers who are all PVG checked and qualified, and they deliver sessions that are aligned to our blueprint. Those will take place in March and April, with information for all nominated players going out in early January. So nominations go live tomorrow, and then in January, information will be sent out to all players and parents about consent forms, etc., and logistics in the new year. That programme is delivered in partnership between the rugby development team and high performance Fletcher's team. So it's a real joint effort. Lots of great coaching opportunities for players, and the programme ends with some festivals as well. So the players involved not only get coaching delivery, but they also get opportunities to play fixtures. We use Coach Logic to put up all those that gameplay onto an online platform to provide feedback, and it's a really positive learning environment for all involved. So some selected players from this program will progress, and I'll hand over to Fletcher in a moment for that. But all players will receive some form of feedback at the end of the program on their areas for development and what they're really strong at. So a really good holistic piece of work from our side. I'll hand over to Fletch now. I was going to talk a little bit about the next stage of the process and what happens post PDH.
Yeah, so from the under 15, what the Regional Academy guys will be doing is to identify, clearly assess the players, make some identification, and then ultimately do some talent selection. Through the summer, we'll run a summer program, and part of that will be to have some festivals, 3 festivals through the summer. There'll be for 2 squads, so we'll mix the squads up. It's not ELP, it's the lads just all mixed in. They'll play against each other. We'll try and match the games as we get through the festivals. And lots of us are probably aware that we'll be measuring certain things. So attack, defense, transition, and set piece. We have some stuff that we're going after that clearly influence the experiences that they have and the skills the coaches are needed in terms of preparing the teams through the summer. And then from there, it just goes into a program. As and when there's holidays, we try and have some other activity, and also give them a bit of a break from academy. So yes, they'll be doing some physical development stuff, some training sessions, but however, that is also an important time for them at the clubs and schools. And then we definitely pick it up in earnest post-Christmas, where again, we run festivals against each other, eventually get to an Edinburgh and a Glasgow 1872, and we start to include the Welsh regions and the English academies, and have some competitive opportunities against them. So that's pretty much what we'll do. Obviously, everybody's aware we go 4 academies. If anybody at any time has any sort of queries or questions about that, either contact the academy manager, contact me directly, and we'll sort it out. Anything I've missed, Neil?
No, great, Fletch. Yeah, just one question came in and then just about injured players. So a couple of people are saying they've got some players who are injured at the moment who they think would be capable of participating in this program. Can we still nominate them? Yes, absolutely, you can. No problem at all. There's obviously quite a long way before the PDH begins in March. So yes, certainly you can nominate those injured players now. That's absolutely fine. In the nomination process, which I'll come on to shortly, there is some information to provide about the player nomination in terms of why you're nominating them. So putting that they're injured or coming back from injury would be useful information in there just for us to hand over to the medical team, etc., just to help them with their recovery if it is a long-term injury. So yeah, that was all, Fletch, and I'll keep going with questions as they come in, but that was good. Just for me, eligibility for the PDH program, we do align with the performance team on this. So this is for players, it's January and December in 2008. That is because a lot of the European competitions, Six Nations, etc., aligns to the 1st of January. So that's the eligibility dates that we go off, and obviously players need to be an active player within a Scottish Rugby club or school. And I'll talk about how to nominate in a moment through our online system. Fletch is going to talk a little bit about nomination criteria now.
Yeah, I'm not going to read it out. You can do some reading. As you imagine, this is a big focus on their attitude, which definitely is attitude and the mindset. It'll be a major driver, both in terms of their selection and definitely how far they go. So it talks about people who are ready to engage, like to be challenged, add value, committed, want to develop themselves. And that's clearly important. So they're all really important qualities that we would look for. And then lots of you will be aware on the blueprint how we've introduced this Scotland GASPs. So some GASP principles, which we'll go on to in a second. So if we just push this over, and this is for the male and female game. So game sense, we can have a look at what we value on the game sense. So good game awareness, spatial awareness, problem solving, beat the game. So a real understanding of lots of different ways that they can solve problems and go on and do well in the game. Attitude, as you imagine, competitiveness, possibly the number one quality that you look for in any players that are coming through. Are they curious, self-motivated, and resilient? Clearly, it's not all going to go in a straight line. Skill set, so all aspects of skill in terms of their ball movement, tackle, evade, positional skills, all of that under pressure. And then their physical potential. And then Scott skills, so the stuff that we're elevating above all else, how are they sort of showing up with that? So certainly from a GAS point of view, so take away the Scott skills, we'd have an expectation that they'd be pretty strong or strong in 2. I think at least 2 is going to give them a fighting chance. So let's say they got they're quick and they got a great attitude, then they're the players we want to nominate. So that should sort of help guide. It should also be part of the feedback as well. We want to be pretty consistent with the feedback. Like, this is how you're in, this is how you stay in, and this is the sort of stuff that you can go and work on around the GASP skills. So, and again, any questions on any of that? We're doing quite a lot of work with it on the academies. So anything that anybody wants to sort of find out a little bit more about, then just get in touch again with either the academies or just contact me directly.
Excellent, thanks, Fletch. Yeah, a couple of people coming in about any more information on GASPs coming out with the blueprint. And yes, we are running some roadshows on the blueprint at the moment. We've got another 4 coming up. I think the next one's on Wednesday night this week up at Dundee. So we are covering bits and pieces of the blueprint. GASPs will be a part of that moving forward. We've got some resources coming out in the new year. But yeah, if at any point any conversations you like, or any clarity you like in any of this is a guideline, you know, for nominations. And obviously there's some more information we're going to go through tonight about how you can make nominations and some considerations moving forward. But no other key questions on that. Thanks, Fletch. Just going to go into a little bit now on nomination considerations, which Fletch is going to go through. I think this is really important, and we get a lot of questions about this. And you know, there are always going to be challenges in your squads about who to nominate and what we're nominating against. It's a big program, circa 550 players will be involved across the country at this. So there are some considerations for you to think about when putting players forward. But Fletcher's going to talk through that now, and I'll monitor the Q&A, Fletcher, as we go.
Yeah. Again, I mean, people will have a good awareness around sort of maturation. So where are people through maturation? Are they through maturation? Sometimes maturation or early maturation is sometimes kind of mistaken for talent, because clearly they'll be having a good impact on the game. So just be mindful of that. Where do you think these people are? Obviously, like facial hair, sort of muscle tone, you know, sort of how fast have you gone recently? All of that type of stuff is useful information just to see where they are through this. They have what's called the peak height velocity. So, you know, in terms of where they are through their growth spurt and maturation, because clearly, you know, physical maturity has a big impact on how you'll do within age grade rugby, probably all the way up to early 20s. Sort of tied in with that, and it's not necessarily the same thing as the relative age effect. Just often people who are born sort of at the beginning of the year, so in our case, January, February, March, they often would have already had the best opportunities. So they would often have had quality success early, because often they get a bit more time on task. Sometimes they physically mature quicker because they're a little bit older. So again, just be mindful of that. And all this is information that we should be gathering around when we're making that initial assessment. And also things such as like how long have they been playing the game? And if you can also capture some information around the genetics, parents, grandparents, that's often helpful. Like what's their sort of gene pool like type stuff. And then we move on to front five. Often in programs like this, the front five, front row are the ones who maybe miss out a bit. Maybe they're not like as skillful as other players. Clearly the type of rugby that we'll do and lots of game and game sense type stuff, sometimes they do miss out. It's important that they don't. In Scotland, anybody been watching our age grade stuff and possibly our first team as well, we need to work really hard around our front row stuff. And I know Sinky and the rest of the gang are doing a great job around that, around the front row school. So please nominate front row, front five players or players who you think will transition. Certainly in pathway, that's probably more likely to be the case. A high percentage, over 60% of our players who end up certainly in the front row wouldn't have started there. They'll be back rows or centres often. And then, just in terms of a number, something maybe to think about. So this initial sweep is around 25% of the playing population. That's what we want. So if you've got a squad, probably be thinking about a quarter of it, needs to be involved in that. Now, that's just a rough estimate. You might not feel as though you would have that many. And in certain teams in Scotland, you might feel as though actually a few more need a bit of an opportunity. But it's approximately 25%. And then under 16s is about 10% of our playing population, based upon the evidence around 10% of the talent type story that comes out from the academics. So that's where we are with that. Anything to add, Neil?
No, good. A few questions come in. I'm just typing some answers to people. And I say we'll put these on a Q&A. Just about players born out with the eligibility criteria. Ultimately, those players will have an opportunity if they're younger for next year's programme. Although they may be missed, if you like, for this season, they'll obviously fit into a criteria at some point either next year, or they will have already been maybe participated in last year's programme. So managing that conversation at club and school level is important. But yeah, the whole under 15 bracket going off from a 1st of September date means that not all of your players will be eligible to participate in this or be nominated, and that's okay, because there will be other opportunities for them to participate. They're not being cut off from this opportunity. It may just come a little bit later for them. But that's the main point probably coming through, Fletch, on that. I'm just checking. Yeah, I think that's most of the questions answered. So yeah, all good. Thanks, Fletch, for that. That's great. Nomination process-wise, so that QR code, so scan your phone on that and it'll take you to the website, on the Scottish Rugby website, and it'll have all the details of the nomination process. The nomination process is backed up by a PDF document that's available on that website, and so that will go formally live tomorrow. And that PDF document talks about everything we've mentioned tonight, and also some additional detail as well. Nominations can be made only by coaches who are registered on scrums. So all coaches should be on scrums anyway, because it's the platform that we use for accessing Rugby Right. If you go on your scrums platform tomorrow and click PDH nominations, which will appear on the left-hand side of your screen, it will then give you access to all your registered players. So all the players who fit the eligibility criteria, you'll then be able to choose which players to nominate. And all it asks you to do is to give us information about their position, which positions they play, a little bit of their playing history, and just a rationale document, just a couple of paragraphs, or a paragraph is fine, about why you're nominating this player and how that it links to the GASPS principles that we've mentioned before. Deadline of Sunday the 11th of December for nominations. That will give us time to then process that, and in the new year look to send out communication to coaches, and also start the process of gaining consent forms from parents. We've had a question about players with specific needs taking part in PDH. Is that possible, and can we open up conversations about that? Absolutely. Once we get the nomination in, we can then open up conversations with the hub manager or the PDH coaches around how to what they need to be aware of relating to that player, and we can also link them in with the player's parents as well. So yeah, certainly that is absolutely possible. Your region, whichever region you're in, has a PDH manager, lead manager. The details of those individuals will be on the website. If you have any questions, you can certainly go to them. You can email in direct to Scottish Rugby. As I say, get in touch with an academy manager, and lots of people on hand to, if you've got any questions at all around this. That's absolutely not a problem at all. We're here to help. Off the back of this webinar, I will email these slides to everyone, put the contact details of regional people in that email as well, and obviously back up all the process that we've mentioned today. Because it's all electronic, one thing to add is that you need to just make sure you submit your nomination so don't forget to click submit. We had a few people last year complete the application piece, move on to the next player before hitting submit. So just make sure you hit submit after each player, and that will then make sure that player has been nominated. There'll obviously be correspondence back to you as a coach about confirming which players you've nominated before we go into the next stage. So that's all from me. Let's just looking at this. See if there are any other questions. A couple of questions about how do I get involved in PDH as a coach. We have been going through a recruitment process for that, and there was information released earlier on in the year, but I know a couple of regions are still looking for PDH coaches. So if you're interested, get in touch with your regional manager or game development manager. Again, details I can circulate off the back of this webinar. So please get in touch with them. They may well have spaces available to be involved in PDH coaching. Generally, the sessions take place on an evening, so a Monday evening or Wednesday evening, and then some sessions on a weekend, and certainly the game opportunities will be weekend based during that March and April period. But it'd be great, obviously, if you're keen to get involved. I'm sure would many of the regions will be keen to have a helping hand. Just looking through that. Excellent. So, just questioning from about under 16 nominations. There is no under 16 program for PDH. It is only under 15 for the boys. Girls under 16 and girls under 18 do open tomorrow as well, though, and that's the webinar. We'll be starting shortly in about 5 minutes. Yeah,
just on that under 16, if you feel as though you've got some players who are under 16 in terms of our definition, as in 1st of January to 31st of December, then again, just contact your academy manager direct if they meet the criteria of GASPs. So fundamentally, that's what they should ask you, is like, which part of GASPs are these guys being nominated on? Is it their game sense? They're just great game players. Like, do they have remarkable skills, great attitude, good physical potential? And it's generally 2 of them. Like within Pathway, you're going to need 2 minimum eventually in order to move through Pathway. Then you're more likely going to need 3. So yeah, so that's what it is. Any doubt, just give me or drop me a message. So it's John Fletcher at the SRU, same as everybody else. It's like, definitely don't be, I don't know what's going on, or don't get yourself frustrated. Just contact us and we'll definitely help. If I don't know the answer, I'll just ask Neil.
Thanks, Fletch. A couple of questions have come in. We've got a couple of minutes in terms of numbers. So a couple of people asking how many numbers from each squad. That there isn't a definitive number. Some people are saying they've been told only, nominate 5 from your squad. There is no limit. There is no limit on this. Ultimately, it's about those GASPs principles. How many players show at least 2 of those, and ultimately, when we went back to the criteria on the slide below here, on that GASP, how many players show an appetite for being involved in this program, do stand out from their peers, and yeah, please nominate those individuals. Now, in some cases, we do have capacity challenges, but for us, we don't want to restrict this by saying that you can only nominate 3 from each club. That wouldn't be a good process from us from a talent development situation. So please nominate those players who you feel show the GASP principles. I think a recommendation for me would be seek advice from others and seek a second opinion before nominating. So, if you've got a squad of, hopefully 20 or so players, get someone else to have a look at players and get their views on who should be nominated, as we all have our bias towards individuals. So I think it's a good idea to get a second opinion sometimes.
Yeah, and just the last thing I made, maybe just slide out that hasn't been mentioned. This is about the future. So this is about what they're going to be, not currently what they are. And that's often where the physical maturity. Now, who's to say somebody isn't really physically mature and is going to continue to kick on, just got a great attitude, super soulful. So definitely, it shouldn't work against people, but just be mindful that people who are dominating the game now, chances are they're not going to do that in the future. So I know it's more challenging in terms of when we got to try and like, where are these players going to be? And that's, again, great advice. Just, checking with other coaches, people who have some experience around players going through, school teachers, DOs, all of that sort of stuff. People are hugely experienced in this.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everyone. That is us. And just going to shoot over now to the girls webinar. Thanks so much for your time, everyone. So this has been recorded, so we will send this out tomorrow. And yeah, please get in touch if you've got any questions at all. Post this. We're more than happy to help you out. Thanks, Rich.
Cheers, everybody. Take care.